Well, it's that time of year, and the disability increases for 2024-25 have been announced, as that means Social Security as well, the Social Security increases. And man, it is gonna piss you off. It fucking pisses me off. It is a crock of shit. We all know that those increases are based off of COLA, which is the cost of living allowance, which is measured by the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, which also tells us our inflation numbers. And man, shows us how much our government is not working for us and not to the benefit of the American people. This is just another example. But hey, before we get deep into it, balls deep, if you're new to the channel, like, comment, subscribe. A lot of veteran stuff, got some aviation stuff, and I'm gonna start doing some more history. More history, but not the way that you were told about it in history class. Not the way that you learned about it, not the way I learned about it, not the way our regularly scheduled government programming taught us it in school. So subscribe and stay tuned for all that goodness.
Oh, what a stroke of luck.
All right, and without further ado, let's look at just how bad we're being railroaded here. And again, these increases, the percentage will be the exact same for Social Security. It's based off the cost of living adjustment as well. So the increases percentage-wise are going to be the same amount that they are for the VA disability pay rates. Drum roll, please. The year-over-year increase for 2024 is 3.2%. Now, if you're like me, just hearing that, you're already thinking, damn, because anybody can just say subjectively your own lived experience that the cost of living has gone up substantially more in the last year than just 3%. It is just an utter and bold-faced lie that they are trying to tell us that the cost of living has only gone up by 3%. And of course, it's not just this year. They do it every year. They try to pretend not only with the disability increases, with the Social Security increases, but just with inflation in general. They pretend like it's not as high as it actually is. It's a basket of goods that determines the aggregate of these goods determines what inflation is. But if you look at the history of the Consumer Price Index and how they have measured inflation over time since say from the 1980s, and how measuring inflation has changed, you would be astounded by the changes that they continually make. Every single year, there's a change that they make, so that change will benefit them in how inflation looks. So that inflation will look like it is less than it actually is. So then all of these payouts that need to happen for VA disability, Social Security, etc., don't need to happen as high, right? And if you don't believe this, go to shadowstats.com. I'll pull it up right now, but I encourage you to go there and just kind of poke around a little bit. And I'll bring up these charts. This guy, John Williams, has crunched the inflation numbers and calculated them based on how we calculated them in 1980 and so forth. And I'll pull this up here, but I do encourage anybody to just go and poke around and look at some of the things on there. So this is inflation. This chart right here is consumer inflation, today's official inflation versus 1990, how it was calculated in 1990. You can see that if it was calculated the way it used to be calculated in 1990, inflation for, we'll say 2023, would have been probably over 15%. It's off the chart. When what they said the inflation was, the official CPI was 9%. We can go further. Look at 1980. The inflation, the CPI for 2023, right? If it was calculated the way that we calculated it in 1980, inflation would have been, let's say, 17%. What they told us inflation was, just 6 or 7. So over a 10% difference because of the way that they have calculated inflation. So while they're going and printing all of this money, they're giving it to JP Morgan, giving it to Vanguard, giving it to the big banks. They're giving it to Ukraine, giving billions to Israel. And the American consumer, the American citizen, is feeling the pain from that. The price of goods, the price of energy, price of oil, everything's going up. Everything's inflated because the dollar is worth less. The dollar's shit because they're printing it into oblivion. The American people are already suffering from it, and then you can't even do them the justice of telling them what the actual inflation rate is, so that the people who are counting on Social Security, the people who are counting on VA disability, they actually get the proper increase based on the increase that they have experienced in their cost of living. And this is how they do it, folks. This is how much your representatives, this is how much your government cares about you. This is how they railroad you, just another way. And if you're wondering, how these calculations are changed, one example, this was from, I think, the 1990s. They threw out steak from this CPI, from this consumer basket, because steak was getting too expensive. So, naturally, what do they decide to do? They take steak out of the equation, and instead they put in chicken into the equation. And they act as if all consumers have changed their preferences from steak to chicken. And just that, in and of itself, changes the CPI. And it makes it look lower than what people are actually experiencing in real life. Now you compound those changes year over year over year over year, and you can see how big of a difference it makes from 1980, how we calculated it then, to 2023 now. It's over a 10% difference in how inflation is calculated. And one change that they just made recently is it used to be calculated in a 2-year index. And now it's only calculated in a year-over-year index. And what does that do? Well, if you would look at inflation from 2020 to 2022, that number is going to be a lot larger than if you look at it from 2021 to 2022. That 2-year index is going to be a lot larger inflation number than just that 1 year over year. These small changes that they constantly make, every single year, they take something out, put something in, however they want to do it, so that they don't have to pay as much for their actions of printing money. This should do two things. This should really piss you off because you're just being lied to. They're just moving these numbers however they want to, so that they don't have to pay you what you are actually entitled to. And the second thing it should do is it should scare the shit out of you. And you look at the official numbers, 2021 it was somewhere around 5%, 2022 it was 8%, now 2024 we're at 3%, just over 3%. But you don't even get the whole picture there. That's not even telling you the whole story. The numbers that you've been seeing, these CPI numbers over the last 3 or 4 years, but you're not even getting the whole story. You're not even getting what true inflation actually is, how much your dollar is actually degrading, how much more it's actually costing you to buy goods and to buy gasoline. It is multiples more than what our government-funded propaganda news stations are funneling down to us. But that's what we get. That's what we get as Americans now, and you should just shut up and eat it. It will be America last, and you will like it. Anyways, that's the end of my rant. This just turned into a rant session, but with all that being said, I guess at least us scum rats should just be happy about our 3% increase, right? That's what we got to hold on to. Y'all have a good week, and until next time.